In this video, I'll be discussing a few Lucchese members who've passed away over the past few years. Obviously, there were many former members who died as well. If I don't mention them, it's because either I never met them or interacted with them. Scotty Javasi was a jovial type of guy and a tough guy at the same time. We happened to be in the same crew, and he was among the first set of guys that I was introduced to. At the time, Scotty had been straightened out for many years. And one of the things he made known was that he truly enjoyed being just a soldier. Years ago, Bubsy Castelli attempted to put a label on Scotty by saying that he was no good. Consequently, Scotty found out and went to the administration asking for permission to kill Bubsy. Unfortunately, permission was never granted. Scotty was someone who always offered good advice and was a pleasure to speak with. Gary Madori, I remember when I first seen him at the Lucchese Social Club in the Bronx, and I was shocked when he was introduced to me as a friend, a member, as I would have never pegged him as one. Gary was a very nice guy with a mellow, laid-back personality. He was also someone who was always at the club with the administration. Danny Katea, I met when he first came home from prison. He was in a wheelchair and leaving in a few days for Florida. We spoke for a while, and from that conversation, he seemed either fed up or disgusted with the life. I also met Michael Pera when he came home from prison, although we couldn't be officially introduced because at the time he was on the shelf and ultimately taken off the shelf before he died. Joe Datello, I've met a few times, but we really never spoke, just greeted one another. He always looked as if he was miserable, or maybe that was just his look. I know he was stuck paying the VIG to Stevie Crea on a large loan, so maybe that explained his constant look of misery. Danny Rizzo was introduced to me by Johnny Sideburns, and Danny was also in our crew, but at the time, he was sick with cancer. When we had one of our Christmas parties, Sideburns drove him to the party, and later that night, when they got back to Howard Beach, where they both lived, Danny wanted to go have a few more drinks someplace. The next day, Sideburns told me, this guy's dying of cancer, and he wanted to go out cabareting. The one thing about Dom Tricello that a lot of people may not know is that he was very funny and had a genuine, I don't give a fuck attitude. Nevertheless, Dom was enjoyable to speak with and had many stories to offer. There were days when he and I would sit on a bench or at the bakery and talk for hours. Joe Caridi was a character, especially at wakes. Joe would sit by himself, and the look on his face said everything. He would look around with disgust. You could tell exactly what he was thinking. Joe was someone who also offered me good advice. And if he liked you, he liked you. But if he didn't, he would show you. John Blackie Mangrella was a member of the Jersey crew and another tough guy, but a true gentleman. The last time I seen him was at the Belmont Tavern in New Jersey, and it was just before he went to prison, where he wound up dying of cancer. Joe Dapoli, the former consigliere, was another character. What I always found funny about Joe was his way of speaking in riddles, just in case there was a bug recording him. Joe was very much into politics, which is probably why he had the position. And Joe was another guy who, if he liked you, he liked you. But if he didn't, you'd know it. Like, for example, he despised Joe Cafe and always displayed that. Richie Duca was someone I met the very first day I went to the club up in the Bronx. He was a Lucchese captain and also a person who did most of the cooking at the club. And he was a very good cook, especially his pesto and fusilli. This picture of Anthony and I was taken at Richie's daughter's funeral in New Jersey. I met Frankie Larino one afternoon. He would sit in Charles Park in Old Howard Beach on one of the benches with a small carrying pouch that held a pistol. I've already discussed what we spoke about in previous videos. Frankie was an old school tough guy, and I came away with our talk that day with a great deal of respect for him. And lastly, Paulo Luca, a Sicilian captain in the family, one who was also a liaison with the Sicilian faction of the Gambinos. I knew of Paulo before meeting him from Thomas D'Ambrosio, who was in Paulo's crew. And then obviously once I became a member, I met him myself. We did have a run-in one time, and I'm sure he wasn't happy with the way I spoke to him, but he was at fault. Regardless, he eventually got over it, and we did get along. So that was a dozen guys I personally knew who are now gone. And I'll end with, may they all rest in peace.